Water and Sanitation Minister Lindiwe Sisulu has promised to deliver over 40,000 water tanks to impoverished communities who had no reliable access to safe water at the start of COVID-19. But as we know, water access remains an out-of-reach goal for many communities. Amnesty International has made a special call on the minister and government to step up its efforts to ensure water services to those who need it most. To tell us more about their efforts, I'm joined by the Executive Director of Amnesty International South Africa, and the head, of course, is Shanila Mohammed. Shanila, good morning. Thank you so very much for joining me here on The Fix. Now, the Minister had quite an impressive plan. She's been on this program, and, you know, according to her, she's managed to get to most places. Why is Amnesty International still saying that she needs to, in fact, panic? You use that in your promotional video, and increase access to water.
Good morning, Karima, and good morning to your viewers. Yes, I mean, I think that, you know, what the minister has shown us at the start of COVID is that when the government wants to do something, they can. So, I mean, the fact that they are out there trying to, you know, deliver water tanks is admirable. But actually, the numbers that the minister puts out are actually not accurate. I mean, you know, she talked about 40,000 tanks, and, you know, we're not seeing those numbers materialize. And in fact, less than half of those have actually been delivered. But the other thing, Karima, is that this is a temporary fix. You know, unfortunately, before lockdown, we had 5.3 million households did not have access to safe water or any water, and we feel like, you know, it's fine, you know, to respond during COVID, and, you know, the water tanks are really are a temporary measure to allow people to wash their hands during the COVID crisis. But I think what we're saying is that the government needs to do more than this, and they should have done more than this a long time ago. And, you know, just coming out and talking about 40,000 tanks, it's not enough. People have the constitutional right to have water in their homes, and the government in their own plan had actually committed to ensuring 100% access by 2030. And our call for panic, our call to the minister to step up, is because we don't think this is even going to happen.
Now, I did reach out to the minister's communications people and asked for an interview. We were referred to the local municipalities in the Eastern Cape, and I did make it clear that I wanted to speak about the national position, and her spokesperson, Macintosh Polela, you know, is still getting back to me. I didn't hear from him again. But what exactly is it that you are unhappy with? Let's start with COVID, over and above the fact that water provision isn't where it wants to be in terms of government's own targets. But if we're just talking COVID, you were saying that of those 40,000 tanks, half was delivered. How do you get to that figure? Did you do research? What do you base your data on?
Well, basically, we base our data on the fact that, you know, we're in touch with many of the communities where this water is supposed to be delivered. And a lot of them are reporting back to us that it's not being, you know, that they're not getting it, that when the tanks are empty, they're not being replenished. And so basically, you know, what we're seeing is that, you know, to some extent, an exaggeration of some of those figures. But you know, 40,000 in itself is not enough, Karima. You know, when you look at, even if they reach that target, it's not enough. If we're telling you that 5.3 million households do not have water, then 40,000 is just a drop in that ocean. And, you know, what we're saying is that, you know, the reason we're panicking is that, you know, under COVID, and as we see the numbers rise, people need to have access to water at the very least, Karima. You know, forget about everything else. And, you know, and a lot of households don't have that. And so that under COVID, that in itself is a problem. But then if we look at, again, you know, the issues of why there is no water, you know, the Auditor General's report last week was just horrifying. I mean, it really painted a damning picture of the water situation, and, you know, and really it boiled down to one thing, Karima, which is the lack of fiduciary responsibility and accountability. And I mean, what horrified me was that the Auditor General in his report said that 50% of resources that are supposed to be, you know, used for water are lost to theft and to, corruption and to other such things. So, we already had a problem before COVID, and now I feel like, the problem is just going to get worse and worse. And after the Auditor General's report last week, it just looks like, it's hopeless unless the minister really takes seriously the fact that people need to have they need to be working on this progressively and look for long-term solutions, not for short-term solutions, and then, pretending that they've done their job. They have not done their job. The minister has not done her job.
Now, Shanila, the former Minister of Water and Sanitation, Ms. Nomvula Mokonyane, had, of course, come in for extreme criticism by the then head of SCOPA, Mr. Themba Godi. He, in fact, spoke on the fact that she shouldn't be in another ministry, and of course she isn't in the cabinet at the moment. But we saw the extent of the corruption. In today's newspapers, you see that Minister Sisulu's efforts to clean up the department has faced stiff resistance. In fact, in one newspaper, it talks of a plot to kill the minister by disgruntled staff. It's a complete mess. Has Amnesty International been able to engage with the minister on whether she's been able to clean up her predecessor's mess, and to what extent do we hold her accountable for a ministry that was completely hollowed out that she inherited?
Well, we have reached out to the minister, but, like you, we have not been very successful. But look, Karima, I understand that the minister inherited a really messed up ministry. I mean, if we look at the statistics, I mean, according to the Auditor General, 6.65 billion was lost last year, rand was lost last year, to just the simple thing of poor infrastructure and leaking, and that's a lot of money. So 1/3 of South Africa's water is actually just trickling away, not getting, to the people. So on the corruption issue, I mean, we really believe that, the ANC government has got to take responsibility. Whichever minister is at the helm of this, it has to be cleaned up. While we understand that the minister wasn't responsible for a lot of the rot that has set in, the minister is now at the helm, and therefore she does have to be held accountable because, and if she's struggling to clean it up, she needs to reach out to the president and to other arms of the government to try to assist in this process. But the problem is, Karima, that we see time and time again corrupt officials being reinstated. Corruption is not given, the deterrent measures that we believe need to be in place. So if you're a corrupt official, most of the time you'll get away with it because there are people more corrupt than you, and so the whole cycle continues. And so, to say that the minister didn't create the mess and so therefore she should not clean it, I feel is to some extent a cop-out. For the minister, she is in that portfolio, she accepted that portfolio, and it's her responsibility to ensure that the majority, that 100% of citizens or people living in South Africa have access to clean, safe water. And that is what they committed, and that is what they need to deliver. We have 10 years left before 2030, and in our analysis, we are nowhere near there, Karima.
Now, if you look at this minister, she herself, her leadership has been rocked by scandal. Her advisor, Mr. Thami Kaplaiki, was caught on tape in an effort to, of course, reap some personal financial reward with other people in a Free State. Thami Kaplaiki has been suspended. I've chatted to people in the African National Congress on whether they're taking action against him, but it's very disheartening because we've seen, for example, the ANC National Executive Committee take a decision on reinstating 2 people from its Limpopo structures that are seriously implicated in the VBS scandal. Do you have faith that Minister Sisulu will be able to essentially shine a light on and consequence manage those who are caught with their fingers in the till?
Look, I mean, for us, we maintain the hope that the government will step up and do what they are constitutionally obliged to do. We understand that it's complicated, but, to be honest, Karima, the ANC has got to decide, are they running this country? Are they in charge of this country or not? And I think the first thing is they've got to deal with the factionalism that exists within the ANC, because until that is dealt with, we are going to consistently see messages, that are ambiguous. We're going to see people being reinstated. And unfortunately, they've got to clean themselves up before they are able to then sort out the country. And unfortunately, we don't see that happening. So I feel like, if you look at COVID and what's happened and the lack of, and the way the economy has been hit, it's just even more depressing when you think about the fact that, even before COVID, people were not being given their basic essential human rights, which is water, sanitation, a roof over their head, etc. So, the minister, this is her moment, Karima. This is her chance to actually prove that she actually does care about the people, that the battles that, her father was in jail for all these years, that that it's not going to just be for nothing, and that people's lives will be uplifted. I mean, that is why the liberation battle was fought. But unfortunately, what we're seeing is that the previously disadvantaged communities, their lives are no better. I mean, yes, we've seen some improvements, but to be honest, Karima, when in a country like South Africa, when people are still using bucket systems, when they open a tap and there is no water, when you're looking at infrastructure that is rotting away, then, it makes you wonder why the ANC government is not taking the lives of their people seriously. This is what they fought for. So why are they not doing what they're supposed to do?
Shanila, one of the big issues, of course, also is the state of the provinces. We've seen in the Eastern Cape, particularly as the numbers of infections in that province skyrocket. One of the big issues is, of course, the state of the state of infrastructure. We've seen a particular crisis around water in the Eastern Cape, and many are of the view that people will die in the Eastern Cape, not necessarily because so many people are infected, but because infrastructure and services won't be provided. What is your understanding of the situation as we speak? And what should Minister Sisulu do? And is it her responsibility? Because she often says that she's responsible for policy and the provinces are responsible for practical implementation. And this ball gets kicked around and down the road and people escape, a responsibility.
Well, I think, Karima, it seems to be the policy across the board. When you talk to the education department, they will tell you that, it's not our issue, the municipalities are not doing their job. Similarly, when you talk to Minister Sisulu about this, they'll be saying, well, the municipalities are not doing their job. But I suppose the question we need to ask Minister Sisulu and the national level government is then who is accountable? Where does the buck end? And if the municipalities are a law unto themselves, then why do we have ministers and why do we have a national government? And so, if they don't have the power to actually ensure that the municipalities are doing their job and that corruption and wastage and theft is not happening, then who's going to do it? And, for us, we're very clear that the accountability sits with the government at the national level. So in our view, Minister Sisulu is responsible, and that, she should find a way. And if it's not working out, if the model as it stands is not working out, then the national government needs to look at a new model to make municipalities more accountable. Because, the municipalities blame national government blames the municipalities. But at the end of the day, it's the people who are suffering. It's the people who do not have the infrastructure. And it's not just the Eastern Cape, Karima, sadly. If you look at it across the board, the municipalities are dysfunctional. And I feel like, it's really about a lack of accountability and no consequence. And I think that is the biggest issue, that when you are not accountable, there are no consequences. And that, if you are just on the right side of the political fence, you will be safe and safeguarded. So the government has got to stop making excuses for corruption, has got to really make sure that those that are corrupt are dealt with in a way that brings up confidence in the people. The saddest thing, Karima, is when we talk to the people that we talk to, they have no faith in the government. And, when your people have lost faith in you, then, you really need to start thinking about what you're doing wrong. And, unfortunately, a lot of people will say to us, well, we have no choice. We can only vote for them. But at the end of the day, the people have lost faith in the ability of their government to serve them. And that is where the problem lies.
All right, Shanila, that is where we leave it. A terrible indictment there from Amnesty International on, of course, the National Department of Water and Sanitation. Thank you so much to Shanila Mohammed, Executive Director of Amnesty International South Africa. Still ahead, the perilous state of South Africa's health services. We speak to Oxfam on their devastating report on the other side of this.